What's up everyone, it's Endymion, and I don't know about you, but the political discourse of today has been tiring me out lately more than usual. It seems like people are more divided than ever before, with echo chambers and ideology pushes becoming the norm over sane, rational thinking. So today I want to talk about how ideologies radicalize people, why it happens, and what we can do to lessen its impact. And most importantly, how buying into these concepts has led to a disconnected world of lonely people who are trapped in their own misery. To start off, I want to talk about how TikTok has unfortunately become a leading factor in the raising of children these days. Everyone knows what TikTok is. It's a cesspool designed to feed endless content to millions of impressionable youth in order to control them. That may sound conspiracy theorist, but the evidence is alarmingly building towards that theory. The overusage of TikTok has led to what some call TikTok brain. Basically, due to how TikTok is designed, it has led to young people having shorter attention spans as well as a massive increase in anxiety and depression as well. TikTok's content is tailor-created for every user, and it does this by using the data it gathers from the device you're using. So based on what you search for online, what your political leaning is, what sorts of entertainment you're into, this is all fed into an algorithm by TikTok in order to make you a customized feed. This may all sound very convenient, but that's clearly by design, as TikTok wants you to absorb as much content as humanly possible every day so it can generate revenue. Obviously, places like YouTube are similar, and algorithms are used as well in order to show you what YouTube thinks you want to see. Likely the algorithm based on what you watch is why you're watching this video to begin with. So the existence of you right now watching this kind of proves that this kind of content moderation clearly works. You may also notice when you're on Twitter, for example, that if you're more left-leaning, you'll see content that opposes what you think. A good example would be someone who's deep into liberal ideology suddenly being shown on their feed something to do with Trump or Republicans. This is what I call rage baiting, and it's designed to make the person seeing that content want to click on it, in which they'll read stuff they disagree with, and in turn it'll cause them to engage with it. And places like Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and more want you to do this. Because if two people of opposing ideologies fight each other, it'll lead to threads of comments. And you'll notice as you read or engage with this content that ads will randomly spawn in between replies. This is obviously by design. Basically, websites have found a way to monetize outrage, and the more people engage with said content, the more revenue is made. It's designed to keep every side of every opinion out there in a constant, never-ending cycle of outrage, with the goal to monetize it and grow it further. The hypocrisy doesn't escape me, as I'm sure people will suggest my content is similar to this. And I can't even deny that yes, a lot of what I talk about is about stuff that outrages people or divides them. But whereas most content is designed for hate farming, I at least try to offer solutions and give a level-headed response, in hopes that bridges can be built instead of burned. Too much content these days is released into the wild without any solutions or nuanced takes. It's simply said for one reason only, which is to enrage you. And while that's fine if you're into that, I try at least to bring people of varying ideologies, gender, and whatever else together, because dividing people will only make us all weaker. Woke ideology at its heart is designed to remove the individual from the healthy support systems around them, and is designed to take independent individuals and turn them into repressed shells that reject the healthy outlets around them. Like with TikTok, there's a massive rise in the rejection of traditionalism. What I mean by this is the huge increase in people who refuse to have children, get married, and instead lead solitary lives where they're usually miserable, tired, confused, or all of the above. The content online that you consume is designed for one thing ultimately in the end, which is to radicalize you. Social media companies and the powers that be have become hell-bent on making people hate each other for years now. A good example of this massive divide would be events like Gamergate. Right away, if you go on Wikipedia and look up Gamergate, it's immediately categorized as a right-wing movement meant to attack women. As soon as you read this alone, it sets up the concept of Gamergate as being politically aligned with one side over the other. And while, like in all movements, there's bad actors always, Gamergate also existed because it was ordinary fans of video games feeling threatened by the interjection of feminism and woke ideological thinking. People like Anita Sarkeesian, for example, are one of the victims, as Wikipedia puts it, of Gamergate. But the Wikipedia article explanation of this event is clearly biased and sides with people like Anita and others. This leads me to one of the huge problems with progressive movements and the general direction online discussion is constantly wrestling with, which is the concept of wrongthink and being politically correct at all times. I would wager many find me to be politically incorrect since I don't subscribe to the talking point ideas of what's considered right by the people in power. I don't believe any person of color should be given preferential treatment over others when it comes to jobs, acceptance into schools, or anything else. I don't feel that concepts like we need more women in enter job market description here or we need more men to think a certain way to be right either. I have always firmly believed that the market of the global village will decide which way things go no matter what. So whether a video game, for example, has a massive feminist slant, I don't think we should celebrate that such a game exists simply because of what it represents. I don't think forced representation is healthy for any medium regardless of context, and I think people at large are tired of being boxed into specific groups because of things they can't control. Ever since events like Gamergate, you've had a massive rise in the amount of lonely men out there today. Men nowadays are as lost as ever, and specialists are constantly trying to find the reason for why this is happening. Why are men so single these days? Why can't they get women interested in them? Is it women's faults or are men to blame? Like I've said in my How Feminism Ruined Everything video, I think the problem is that at large, it's these massive politically charged movements that are to blame. Humans have always been a tribal-like group. Whether we like to admit it, even in junior high, you would have groups of people who would form cliques based on similar interests or popularity. Many people at their core are terrified of the concept of being alone or becoming ostracized from the larger group. The entirety of the pandemic taught me that when people are scared, they'll do anything that's required of them in order to protect themselves. Look at how the people who didn't get the jab were treated by the news and on social media. Within a single year of propaganda, the government successfully indoctrinated and segregated the entire population into groups. Living through that event opened my eyes to just how weak and impressionable the average modern-day person really is. And while many might like to think of themselves in something like Star Wars as a furious Jedi or rebel fighter, the pandemic showed me that when push comes to shove, most people would rather become stormtroopers if it meant they'd be saved. So why am I talking about jabs, Star Wars, and lonely men? The point is that a lot of this nonsense is fueled by corporations in order to divide people in order to keep them separated. Because as long as Group A isn't speaking to Group B or C, then none of these groups will ever accomplish anything of meaning. Men who subscribe to nonsense like the alpha sigma male mindset do it because of their loss of direction. They feel vindicated by women, and instead of improving themselves through going to the gym or pushing themselves to achieve their goals, they'd rather listen to other men tell them their stigmas are valid, which just feeds into that darkness further. On the flip side, women are indoctrinated by media campaigns and academia that teaches women that they are all inherently victims. And it's led to many women hating men, not wanting families, and then blaming things like the patriarchy when they don't even really know what that means in the first place. All of this jumbled, nonsensical garbage is being fueled by media corporations in order to radicalize each and every one of you into distrusting and hating those who think differently than you. The idea of a woke individual listening to the opinion of a conservative might as well as be listed as a felony, because their brains have been so brainwashed by the echo chambers they live in that they reject anything that goes against it. And they do this in order to make sure they don't get kicked out of these groups. Because, like I said, one of the scariest things for people in the modern day is to be separated from their cliques or groups. It doesn't take a genius to look at the world today and see it as being completely altered to even the 2010s in comparison. Of course, for hundreds of years, people of opposing groups disliked one another. But these days, especially with the rise of the internet, things have become hollow and disconnected. It's ironic that we live in such a world that is more connected than it's ever been, yet we're all so distant and alone at the same time. And while we may look at the internet at large as the best thing to ever happen, like with anything, there's always going to be those who use these things for sinister reasons. The internet has allowed these ideologies to run amok at an almost unrestricted level, with the biggest victims being young adults and children. Like I said earlier, TikTok has ruined and will continue to ruin many more people in the future simply because it's free to use, readily available, and convenient. The meteoric rise of people self-diagnosing themselves with conditions is unfortunately something that's happening more often as well. Women especially are prone to these sorts of identity attacks, and the amount of women who think they have OCD or autism has skyrocketed because of social media. It's gotten so bad that young people are romanticizing the idea of having a mental illness. And when the internet is readily available, this leads to newer generations of people who lack many skills or the ability to think for themselves due to how early indoctrination begins. This is why ideologies like the explosion of multiple genders or politics taking root so early are popular. I remember as a kid, I barely knew anything about politics or the world at large, and I thankfully got to live my youth in blissful ignorance and just enjoyed being a kid. These days, kids are changing genders as often as they are their own hair colors. And a lot of what people consume from the news, YouTube, TikTok, and more, it just leads to future generations adopting what I can only describe as a victim mindset. Woke ideology hammers the idea into the brains of children that they are all victims. They are not capable of breaking these systemic barriers and should just instead lash out against anything in order to feel something. Due to woke ideology, the sad reality is that a vast majority of children are going to grow up to be childless, genderless, and have no ownership of anything, or concept of what having a healthy lifestyle even is. But they'll know that somehow it's men's fault for women's problems, and the boys growing up will be taught the opposite, which the corporations will monetize through their algorithms, feeding into more outrage and hate clicks, which will only radicalize even more, creating more echo chambers until the cycle continues forever. So, unlike other videos, I would likely stop here and leave you in a pit of misery in order to radicalize and make you angry. What I should do is offer you no solutions and just walk away knowing I've successfully made you watch this long with no answer in sight. But don't worry, I'm not going to do that. Instead, here's some steps you can do to better yourself. Some of it may sound like common sense, but in a world where common sense is attacked, it sadly isn't all that common anymore. To start, I want you to always question everything you see. I don't mean to be a nihilist and think everything is out to get you, but use your logic and try to break down what's being shown to you. Remember, ultimately, you only have 4 things to give in this world: your time, your money, your energy, and your love. Everything you do will require one or multiples of these things in order to make it happen. Don't waste your time consuming things that just make you angry or sad. Instead, when you see things that look to anger you, pull yourself outside of that situation and look to see what's really going on. Why does the thing you see make you angry? What can you do so it doesn't have such a hold over you as a person? I'll admit, I used to be neck deep in manosphere right-wing jargon, but I have pulled myself out of that mentality years ago, and I gotta admit, I'm better for it. Now what used to be gospel is viewed as a bunch of snake oil salesmen trying to poison me while claiming that they have the cure. The same can be said about feminist propaganda as well too. Sever anything that gives you toxicity in your life, whether it's a place, person, or thoughts. And please go to the gym and better yourself physically, as the stronger your body gets, so too does your mind. The next time you're watching something and the content is made to outrage you, I want you to ask yourself deeply why what you're seeing actually affects you the way it does. Were you conditioned to think that way, or is it a real problem that you can tangibly fix in your own life? If anything I'm saying here sounds stupid or pointless, you might want to take a second and really assess what your purpose in life is to begin with. We're not here to just fight, suffer, and die. There has to be joy amidst the madness, and constantly feeding yourself into a victim mindset will just keep you down fighting with others without really knowing why you're fighting in the first place. Ultimately, the concept of woke ideology and the radicalization it seeks to evoke is simply hate by design. Believe me, as someone who was so deep in their own rage, I have seen rock bottom, and I have definitely smashed my fist against it. It's only with your will and the strength of your mind that you can push past these insane woke ideological concepts and start to really better yourself as a human being. Woke ideology has radicalized many already, but it doesn't mean it needs to stay that way. And if you are at rock bottom, just remember that the only way to go from there is up. Stop listening to the insanity, reject complacency, and remember that even if it might not seem like it, you are truly in control of what you do in this world, and you can change your life for the better. How do I know? Because I'm living proof that following your dreams can be a reality if you work hard enough. So stop complaining, stop labeling yourself a victim, reject the insanity, and rise above the noise, or you'll drown in the chaos. There's more to life than being angry and hating everything, so for your own sake, stop telling yourself it'll be alright while not doing anything to better yourself. I did that for almost all of my 20s and I lived in utter misery because of it. Your biggest problem will likely be overcoming your own mindset that's been pounded for years by the insanity pushed upon you. But when you move past that and you start to see the world for not what they want you to see it as, but for what it really is, my friends, that is when you truly start living. So thank you for watching, like the video, subscribe for more rational, sane thinking essays like this one, and I'll see you in the next one.